Hey there, welcome to World Breach Report number 21. And I'm your host, Sean, from Sean Hunt's Monsters, where we discuss the files that can help you escape the cage that imprisons your mind. Thanks and gratitude to everyone who has liked, shared, and subscribed if you're helping in this battle against the forces of darkness. And a special shout out goes today to Mation, who was just recently made an admin in the very limited small group of moderators I have inside of the Discord server, which you should definitely check out. Links in the description below, where there's a bunch of very good people who are controlled by an iron fist by my mods. No, but seriously, Discord gets a bad rap, so this one here, we've got it locked down pretty tight. There's no dirty language. There's nothing allowed there that's even remotely bad. And with the right kind of moderators and the good kind of people there, it's a good place for us to talk about the kind of things that we're into, like monster hunting. And there's no better time to know about that than right now. But first, a brief update on me. Things have been going well for me lately. It's been a bunch of long days, so I haven't been able to get into the Discord server as much as I would like, but having started a new job and working in the trades, it's been like pretty busy, pretty taxing. But the good news is that I've still managed to be able to find time to actually get my motorcycle license. Well, the learner's license, the one where you can actually go and drive around without being supervised, which is handy, which will lead to some more better footage. And I got enough road experience now to know that I never want to ride my motorcycle on the road. I mean, other than to get to the back roads that take me to the deep bush locations, because let me tell you, that's some scary stuff. I'd way rather go unlock a coffin that I don't know what's inside than have to drive through traffic on a motorcycle, let me tell you. Certain kinds of people are into it, certain kinds of people are not. But I'm definitely in the am not category, which is why I bought a TW200. Definitely want to check out that bike. I recommend other people do the same should you wish to go on adventures or just expand your monster hunting repertoire. And like I said, never has there been a better time to expand your monster hunting repertoire than now, because there's been a monster attack. What? In Pittsburgh County, Oklahoma, a McAllister mother is clinging to life at a Tulsa hospital following a brutal attack by an unidentified animal that investigators say is unlike anything they've seen in over 30 years. What? Alicia Maxey was found severely injured on Sunday morning in a remote yard near Blanco. While the family initially believed a dog was responsible, the sheer scale of the injuries has prompted the Pittsburgh County Sheriff's Office to bring in wildlife experts to solve the mystery of what kind of animal attacked Alicia. According to an investigator, Alicia had pulled into a nearby driveway. She was found roughly an hour later by the homeowner, an EMT who immediately began life-saving measures until a medical helicopter could arrive. In 38 years, I've never seen anything to this extent as far as injuries caused by a wild animal, said the Pittsburgh County Sheriff, Frankie McClendon. The Sheriff's Office is now working with Oklahoma Wildlife Service to identify the animal. Tell me this doesn't sound like a Call of Cthulhu adventure, like, you know, the newspaper report you get at the beginning of the adventure where they're like, yeah, you should go check this out. Like, what the hell is that? Her sister-in-law, Kat Kelly, said Alicia remembers pulling into the gate before hearing a deep growl. Something just pounced on her and knocked her to the ground. She says it was dog-like, but she said it certainly wasn't a dog. Alicia has already gone surgeries to treat extensive wounds to her face, legs, and arms. During a brief moment between procedures, Alicia spoke about the physical toll of her recovery. I'm in too much pain to say anything right now. This is crazy. They got to GoFundMe up there and all the rest of it. But isn't that kind of an odd thing? Like, you'd think that would be like leading news, like, yeah, some strange unidentified animal just attacked this woman in broad daylight, out of nowhere. Nobody knows what it is. What? Like, yeah, you know, that's one of those kind of things that makes me think, you know, isn't there, if you live in the United States and there's, you know, you're legally allowed to carry certain tools with you that might be covered in the Second Amendment or whatever, that might be a good idea to do that, you know, because, what the actual, you know what I mean? And how did that, like, where do you go with that? Like, what do you think, like, is this like a dogman attack? Like, what is this? Seriously, what the hell is that? And then she's found, like, mangled? Like, that is a seriously paranormal thing going on there. And in other 48 news, now this, I've heard stories like this before, but this really trips me out. And this is apparently super, super understood. But how Lovecraftian is this? A flesh-eating bacteria devoured a man's arm and leg in just 3 days. A 74-year-old man went to an emergency department in Florida, with rapidly rotting limbs after jumping into the waters off the Florida's Gulf Coast. Just 3 days earlier, the man was otherwise healthy, active on the coast, but at one point he jumped into the water, got a cut on his right leg, and it quickly became painful and bruised. 2 days later, the skin on his right arm also changed color. According to a case report in the New England Journal of Medicine, by day 3, when he arrived in the hospital, he was in dire shape. The lower half of his leg was darkly colored, indicated bleeding under the skin. Doctors noted a cracking sound suggesting gas bubbling out of his dying flesh, and some of his outer layers of skin were peeling off. His arm wasn't much better. It appeared red, discolored, and swollen. A large blood blister, a hemorrhagic bulla, had formed, suggesting severe flesh-eating infection. Wow, there's some graphic images if you want to check that out. Now, I don't know about you. In this case, the man did not die, but his right leg was so far gone by the time he reached the hospital that he needed to have it amputated above the knee. His forearm required extensive skin grafting, which was collected elsewhere from his body. After an antibiotic regimen of 6 months of healing, doctors reported he had healed well, but lost the leg. Wow. And this is jumping into a body of water off the Gulf Coast. So he jumped into the ocean, and all of a sudden something hits him that does that? That is grim, dude. Like, that is seriously sick. And you gotta wonder, is that actually what happened to this guy? I guess, they've got the medicine for him and stuff like that. But you get a story like this, which they've got to kind of nail down, and you compare that to this weird unidentified animal attack that left this woman crippled. Very, very interesting stuff. These flesh-eating bacteria, I've heard of these things before. Before I'd just be like, what is that? What is that? I've heard of that before, but now since the last few years and how we've all learned to trust the science, sometimes I don't trust the science. Sometimes I'd like to know a little bit more about that story and just, find out a little bit more about that bacteria, because that is a crazy, crazy amount of damage to be done in a short amount of time. Now, on the scientists, trusting the scientists, U.S. scientists are dead or missing. Sources cite a disturbing pattern. Now, we've talked about this before. Several prominent American researchers and administrators have reported dead or missing since 2023, according to U.S. intelligence sources cited by multiple media outlets. These sources have described a series of incidents forming a disturbing pattern. Yes, I would think so. The cases span multiple states and involve scientists working in fields including cancer research, nuclear tech, astrophysics, and fusion energy. The most recent known incident occurred in March 2026 when the body of a cancer researcher, scientist Jason Thomas, was discovered in Massachusetts Lake. I don't think he was hit by the same thing. The number of cases involved violent deaths. Astrophysicist Carl Grillmeyer was fatally shot on the porch of his California home. Physicist Nuno Lario is reportedly working on a breakthrough fusion energy research, was also killed in the Massachusetts in December of 2025. Now, we talked about this guy. And that was a bit weird because the guy who had it hung on him didn't really kind of add up. We were both talking about that. We were like, hey, that seems kind of strange. You remember that? And other cases are categorized as unexplained disappearances. Retired Air Force General William McCaslin, who was linked to the nuke program, went missing in February. And then he apparently went missing from his house. Don't even see him leave. 2 employees from the Los Alamos laboratory, Anthony Chavez and Melissa Cassius, were reported missing in the summer of 2025 after leaving their New Mexico homes on foot. So, yeah. What's all this about? What is all this about? Is this all just, wow, that's kind of weird. It's kind of a normal thing, but it's normal. It's nothing paranormal about that. I mean, there's nothing to really indicate that might be something paranormal, really, unless you bring into account the UFO-linked scientist who revealed disturbing encounters before her suicide, or unaliving herself, if you're not allowed to say that on the tube of views. A young scientist researching technology that could revolutionize space travel and energy production reported being harassed for government secrets before her death. Amy Eskridge, who's 34, was found dead on June 11, 2022 with a gunshot wound to the head. That'll do it. While her death was ruled a suicide, the resurfaced video has raised chilling questions about what may have really happened. Speaking to a fellow researcher in May, in 2020, Eskridge said, "I've been roofied multiple times, like my extended team has been roofied multiple times, and it's like the roofie party over here." So she claims that there's been a lot of drugs that have been introduced. Now, hang on to this, because this has made me think about a few things here. Eskridge adds she was afraid of continuing her research in public due to what she described as social engineering campaign, where strangers approach her with detailed knowledge of her life and question her about her work. Then all of a sudden, these people in the bar around me are like, "What do you do for a living? Tell us what you do. Do you work for the government? You're sitting there on your laptop. It looks cool. Tell us what you're doing." Frank Milburn, a retired British paratrooper and intelligence officer who claimed to have been in contact with Eskridge before her death, shared messages she had sent him. One dated May 13th read, "If you see a report that I killed myself, I most definitely did not. If you see any report that I overdosed, I most definitely did not. If you see any report that I killed anyone else, I most definitely did not." That's weird. You know, that's kind of funny, isn't it? But it's kind of a sort of trend that we see happening now a little bit more frequently. Or maybe it's always been happening, and we're just sort of becoming aware of it these days. You know what I mean? Maybe that's just something that's coming along, and we're finally just sort of recognizing that this is actually happening. Now, this has given me some thought too. And also, I should mention that doesn't mean that everybody who perishes, like the guy with the bacteria, that seems legitimate, but that is just such a Lovecraftian way to die that I had to include that in the show, because that is just, yeah, like, wow. You know what I mean? And if you get that in, like, the ocean, to jump into the water off the Gulf Coast, that seems very strange to me. But a guy whose books I've read, who I never really agreed with, like, I've always thought this guy was a bit far out there for me, because, you know, everyone who's talking isn't always there, but David Wilcock is dead. Ancient Alien star David Wilcock's family speaking out about his mental health issues and financial strain following his death at 53 in an apparent suicide. David Wilcock took his life on April 20th, 2026, after a long struggle with depression and overwhelming financial debt. He said, his family said in a statement released by the Boulder County Sheriff's Office on April 23rd. His family and chosen family hope this loss encourages more focused attention on mental health care access. The Wilcock's family message was publicly released following some skepticism among the UFO YouTubers fan base about suicide and his cause of death. The family clarified Wilcock's status as the New York Times best-selling author and prominent figure in the disclosure community who argued that the world governments are concealing evidence about existence of aliens, and was only part of the story of a life that, like any other, unfolded through internal struggles, evolving beliefs, and a quest for meaning. Now, I watched a bunch of David Wilcock stuff. I even listened to one of his books. And it seemed to me that he was making some pretty wild claims. You know what I mean? Like, he was kind of getting out there with his stuff. And I wouldn't, I don't want to speak ill of the dead, the poor guy. I don't agree with suicide. I never have. So, I don't care how rough your life is. You don't snuff yourself. That's not in the cards. Strange thing for a Canadian to say. I know, right? Like, who does that? But yeah, that's kind of sad that he passed. But, it is, I don't think I think that this was a legit suicide. I don't think anybody took out David Wilcock. The one above it, though, that seemed a little bit odd to me. You know what I mean? Like, it does seem like the people that were involved in this field, like Nick Pope and all these guys, they're all passing now. You know what I mean? It's only going to be a matter of time before we lose George Norrie. I mean, God love him, I hope he lasts another 30 years. George Norrie's great. He's broadcasting on coast to coast. But eventually, all these guys are aging out. We need to get some new blood in there. We need to get people investigated. Luckily, there's guys like Jesse Michaels. There's guys like the guy from Area 52, whose name escapes me, but, the Area 52 guy. These are all good people, and they're probably going to be the ones to pick up the torch. And, of course, other people who might get inspired by ideas like from this show and like their show. And maybe you can get involved too. That's why we have the Discord server, and that's why we're trying to get people to go out there and go on actual missions to get actual footage so that we can open source this. So we can stop relying on one or two people to give us all our information, because they're human, like David Wilcock. Sometimes things happen. And, you You can't really stop it. Also, that's not to say, though, that people really do get snuffed by the government for UFO stuff. Like this dude who, a would-be whistleblower, died of an accidental drug overdose after agreeing to testify to Congress. What? An Air Force veteran who agreed to testify before Congress about a secret government UFO programs died just months before hearings of an accidental drug overdose, the Post has learned. Matthew James Sullivan, 39, died in his home in Falls Church, Virginia, on May 12th, 2024, from a lethal mix of alcohol, alprazolam, cyclodoxazaprine, and imipramine, according to the Northern District Office Chief Medical Examiner. Alprazolam is a generic Xanax and an anti-anxiety medication. You know, I don't know, man. Like, I look at all this stuff, and if you're that messed up, he's got him on stuff that was used for treating kids with bedwetting and stuff like that. Honestly, like, I think there's probably some natural solutions to this. You know, like, I don't like any drugs that have a lethal dosage limit. You know, any drug that you take that can kill you if you take it in a high enough dosage, you probably shouldn't be taking that drug. So that sort of narrows it down to, like, I don't know what, weed and mushrooms. That's about it, because everything else will kill you if you take too much of it. And, you know, I don't want to advocate drug use. I don't. It's not something that I currently do, but I have done in the past. And I got to say that when I did it, it helped me out. So, I don't know. I'd sooner see guys get onto this. I'd sooner see a guy fire up a joint than I would to see him taking all these crazy drugs. Now, I'm not a doctor, obviously. But, and a lot of these drugs, you know, people self-medicate and they get themselves into trouble. Like, one of the things about marijuana that happens is it kind of puts a pause on your life. You know, nothing really happens. You just kind of coast along because you don't have that divine discontent that makes you want to move forward with your existence. And, yeah, you got to get off that stuff. You do. And all these medications and these anti-anxiety medications, they're all supposed to be Band-Aids. Even if you use something like marijuana to, you know, take the edge off, so to speak, that's just to take the edge off. I mean, that edge is going to come back, right? So you got to make serious lifestyle changes. Maybe you got to quit your job, get out of that relationship. Do what you got to do so you can start living your life again so you don't miss the whole point. You know what I mean? Nobody likes a stoner. They don't. Like, you're basically effectively useless. So you can't get into this stuff. And these guys that are part of this prescription population, man, I've never been into this jazz. But it is definitely bizarre. Mr. Sullivan's death was a local Virginia medical examiner's case. The manner of circumstances of his death raised substantial questions as he was preparing to provide testimony to Congress. The sudden and suspicious, this is in a letter addressed to the FBI director, a sudden and suspicious circumstance surrounding his death raised significant concerns about potential foul play and the safety of other individuals involved in this matter. Now, we've covered a lot of ground here about these guys committing suicide and stuff like that. So this leads me to a book that I was reading called The Seventh Sense, Secrets of Remote Viewing as Told by a Psychic Spy for the U.S. Military. Now, it's by Lynn Buchanan. Now, the Gateway program and all the CIA spying stuff, all the remote viewing, all that jazz, all comes from one guy, and it's not Robert Monroe, actually. The guy, like Robert Monroe, has protocols that he uses, right? But coordinated remote viewing, that whole remote viewing thing, was actually thought up by a dude named Ingo Swann. And he's like one of the most non-militaristic dudes you've ever seen in your life, this guy. But Ingo Swann was brought into the military, and he started with some of the, like, Operation Grill Flame, and all these different ops back in the day. Now, Lynn Buchanan's book is pretty, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I mean, it's not as good as some other ones, but it's in the library. There's a lot of good information in there. It's worth buying. But one of the major things he talks about in there, because Lynn Buchanan ran the database for the program, so he got to see all the information from all the remote viewers, right? And he kind of names names a little bit. I mean, he doesn't name them directly, but if you're aware of the space, you know who he's talking about when he's talking about different people. And you begin to realize very quickly that there was something to the remote viewing program. One of the things that he said that was really wild to me was he said that he did not do active influencing. He was asked to do it, where he was asked to like go out and influence like world leaders and all this kind of jazz. And he claimed he tried to influence Gorbachev and it may have had some effects. But he said there was only one other guy in the United States who was trying to do active influencing. So that got me thinking. And of course, he doesn't know that, right? So let's assume all this psychic stuff is real. Let's suppose that when Skip Atwater was on Sean Ryan, and he said, oh yeah, there's 7 different organizations doing psychic consciousness research. Let's suppose that this psychic space, this psi space is a real thing. Let's suppose that the astral projection thing is a real thing, because it seems to be. And let's also suppose that if that was a real space and a real thing, don't you think the government would have groups that are monitoring that psychic space? For example, so let's say I go hit my head tomorrow, I get bit by a radioactive spider and I develop psychic superpowers. Don't you suppose that they probably already have psychics on staff who are looking for that? Like if you would all of a sudden just blip up into the psychic sphere somehow, they'd probably be able to detect that. And since Lynn Buchanan in his book very specifically talks about remote, like influencing people psychically and like controlling their minds and stuff like that, it makes me wonder when you have people that are involved in disclosure programs or they're getting too close to information and they suddenly go insane. And it's happened more times than not. Now, it's happened historically where reporters started looking into the phenomenon, they looked into paranormal stuff, and they sort of lose touch with reality. And then they wind up killing themselves. But it's interesting when you've got individuals who may be targeted, like if you have the abilities, kind of like the Havana syndrome, right? They don't know what it is. They hit them with this frequency. These people get sick. They have all these problems. And, it's for years they said that it wasn't a real thing. And now they've discovered that, oh yeah, Havana syndrome is a real thing. There's some kind of frequency being broadcast. We don't know what it is. We don't understand it, but we know that there's some external force in play. And what I'm suggesting here is it's possible, it may even be probable, that the U.S. government has the capability, and other governments have the capability to do psychic influence on people. Now, we know this. We know that it's already being done because Chris Bledsoe, when he went into NASA with his boy there, his friend told him, oh yeah, when we walk by this building, sing a song in your head, like a nursery rhyme or something. Because there are psychics in the building who are reading surface thoughts looking for terrorism. So what do you suppose? They're one of a kind, or maybe there's a program there? You see what I mean? That's clearly indications that there's some kind of security system there. So what is this like? Wow. What do we do with this? Well, when you consider that the Timothy Taylor, I believe his name was Tim Taylor, the guy who, was Chris Bledsoe's contact, he said that they had different protocols that they followed all the time. Like one of the things they did was they cut out caffeine because caffeine creates enough background static noise that you can't pick up on the subtle influences. You can't pick up on like feelings and intuition. Now, personally, I've given up caffeine for quite some time now. I just dropped it. I'm not doing the caffeine thing anymore. I just recently decided I was going to go super nuts, as I do. I do this every now and again. I decide that I'm going to, level up a bit. And I stopped eating sugar and pretty much all carbohydrates. So bread, pretty much like, think of like the ultimate paleo diet is kind of what I'm trying to do here. And I find that the energy level that I have has changed drastically changed within the first week. Like easily within the first week, you can feel it. And once you get clear of all these poisons that we know they're dumping into our bodies, and you've heard this before, you hear lots of these, these hippy-dippy folks that'll say, oh yeah, you got to get off these poisons, and once you do, you feel so connected, you start doing yoga, and it changes everything. Well, what if it really does? Like no shit, man. Like what if it really does? What if the only thing you have to do is actually eat real food? You know what I mean? Like what if you just, instead of going and getting a burger, you went and got a roasted chicken and some salad, get some halfway decent balsamic vinegar on her and eat that instead. That's fast food. You bring it home, choke it down. I like roasted chicken. And you find that if you start eating foods and drinking, like actually do drink the 12 cups of water a day. You know what I mean? Actually do juice a lemon. Actually do a little bit of research. Once we begin to understand that it's if you start treating your food as medicine instead of just, fuel, or even worse, as something that's just going to make you feel better because you're caught into this sugar crash cycle, Maybe you have abilities that you're unaware of. Maybe they're afraid of the abilities that you have. Now, I've long since thought, and by virtue of this program, you know that I believe we're more than our physical body. So if that is the case, and we sort of have like a psychic body, how would we body build? How would we do that? How would we make ourselves stronger, better, faster? Well, let's see now. There's generally I have this trifecta where you have the mind, the body, and the spirit. And you work on any two of those, the third one goes along for the ride. So if you're feeling foggy, work on your body and your spirit, and you'll find that your mind starts feeling better. If you're spiritually feeling screwed up, you can work on your mind and body. You see where I'm going with this. And I find that that's very true. And the diet, even working out, right? Even if you never lift a weight in your life, 70% of fitness is your diet. I mean, how much of your world is controlled by your diet? Really? I mean, now if you look at all these guys like the Rockefellers and super rich people, all the elite, what are they really concerned with? They're concerned with their food. And it's not because they want to look good. I mean, sure, some celebrities are all like, whatever. But the really elite crowd, they get really obsessive about food. And I think that's one of those things that maybe, I'm not saying you should go on a crash diet. I'm not saying you should do what I do. But I think you should definitely educate yourself about what food is doing to you. What exactly does sugar do to your body? What is that? Why is it that everything in our culture is trying to kill us? I mean, I already covered on the show how processed food should basically have warning labels on it like cigarettes. That's kind of crazy, isn't it? Kind of seems like a little bit, I don't know, like you're kind of being kept in some sort of weird death camp, but one without any bars. And now we just had this story that's come up through the bubble up to the surface about federal surveillance tech becoming mandatory in new cars by 2027. Boosh. Your next car purchase comes with an unwelcome passenger, a federal mandate requiring surveillance technology that monitors your every blink, glance, and head nod, thanks to Section 24220 in the 2021 Infrastructure Investment of Jobs Act. The NHTSA must finalize rules forcing all new passenger vehicles to include advanced impaired driving prevention technology. Oh, yeah. Essentially turning your dashboard into a judgment-free zone that's anything but judgment-free. Infrared cameras and sensors create a constant biometric assessment of the driver's alertness and sobriety. The tech involves infrared cameras mounted on steering columns or A-pillars tracking eye movements, pupil dilation, or drowsiness patterns. Unlike the breathalyzer ignition interlocks from the DUI convictions, these systems operate passively, no blowing required. Your car simply watches and decides whether you're fit to drive. The surveillance rollout targets late 2026 to 2027 for all new passenger vehicles. Your used car is getting better and better all the time. So yeah, if you're thinking about picking up a used car, now is the time to pick up that beater and just keep it if you can, because you can fix it up. And even if it's not running right now, you get it for a song. Yeah, because it seems like these new cars, they're getting kind of crazy. Now, this isn't absolute law yet, because there's a backup story that gives us a little bit of hope here. Kill the kill switch. Chip Roy pushes the amendment to kill Biden's car surveillance mandate. The vehicle kill switch may be getting another chance to be killed in Congress this week as a member of House Committee rules to repeal the legislation that directs automakers to install surveillance technology in all new vehicles. Representative Chip Roy of Texas, a committee member and influential congressman from the 4th House of Freedom Caucus, said the Biden-era mandate poses a direct threat to our Fourth Amendment rights. Republicans should not be continuing to blatantly invasive Biden-era policies that enable round-the-clock monitoring of Americans in their own cars. Roy told, well, I don't care what era it is, he shouldn't enable that policy. Roy told the Daily Signal where the possibility of the amendment was still being discussed with the Rules Committee. That's why I introduced an amendment to the FISA to eliminate the kill switch and stop this Big Brother technology from being built into new vehicles. This is Roy's second attempt to kill the switch this year. The need for an amendment has already large support from House conservatives, including Thomas Massie, Scott Perry, blah, 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 blah. So that's interesting. It'll be interesting to see if it passes. I am hopeful, but I don't know, man. I don't know. It's one of those kind of things that makes me go, yeah, geez. Now, what's crazy is that story about the woman being attacked by some weird creature we don't know anything about, that story never got any play. But this story is making the rounds all over the place. I love this stuff. Silent frequency that makes old buildings feel haunted. Okay, everybody knows this. We're talking about the basement feels wrong and you can't say why. Something in the air, maybe the quality of silence. Your mood dips, irritation creeping from nowhere. The music playing through speakers of sound suddenly sadder than it did a moment ago. Now they're talking about 18.7 hertz notes. That's what's making you freaked out. It's not anything psychic. You don't have psychic abilities. No, no, no. It's 18.7 hertz notes. That's what's doing it. It's all in your head. All in your head. That woman who got attacked by some dog thing, yeah, that's all in your head. That's not a real thing at all. So they tell you that. Now, is that a real thing? Sure. Swamp gas is a real thing too, but I don't think that's what the lights in the sky are. I think that is one of the cover methods. And it's like, you know, for example, there's all these things that, like, the woman being attacked is a big one. You know, that wasn't, you know, a sound that she heard. People have seen all kinds of crazy stuff, had all kinds of encounters with dark forms, all kinds of Fortean phenomena. You're going to tell me those are all 18 hertz notes? Get the hell out of here. Get out of here, man. It's not even worth it. And to counter that, I give you the Estes method, a modern ghost hunting this is a new theory. Well, not new. It's kind of rehashed. But this is a ghost hunting technique where a brief overview of the method. Okay, the Estes method. Estes method? But ESTES. The E method. A brief overview of the method. One person listens to a spirit box through headphones. That's like a radio tuned to white noise, picking up sounds, often blindfolded, while another asks questions and listens for apparent responses. The individual listening is often described as being isolated from everyone else, placed to focus their responses based on what they are hearing from the spirit box. So they don't actually hear the questions being asked. This is to provide the impression that they are not likely to be influenced by the other's presses, meaning they have no idea what the questions are being asked out loud in the environment. And that's pretty much it. One person isolated visually and audio from the rest of the group, and one receiving information from the form of audio from a spirit box. A simple radio skipping through the stations. As they hear words through their headphones, they will say them out loud in the room, and while the other person asks a series of questions, either predetermined or naturally molded based on the responses to the previous question to provide an appearance of a conversation. Yeah, the appearance of a conversation. So, first of all, that would scare the living hell out of me. You know, honestly, you got some guy who's got headphones on, a blindfold on, he's like, shh, and you're like, is anyone there? And all of a sudden he goes, yes. You know, what is that? What is that? Well, we don't know. And because we don't know, it makes us really uncomfortable and we don't really want to engage it. But it's worth engaging. It is. We should figure out what this stuff is because there's something going on with this crap. And to terminate this, I've been learning some more information about things we can use that UFOs, Bigfoot, all these phenomenon, even the Skinwalker Ranch guys, you look at all the books, there's certain things that are repetitive throughout the entire series, certain things that they do not like. And one of the things they do not like and have not liked, and any child will tell you this, if there are monsters, what kills monsters? Light. Yes, that's why in our Discord channel we have a whole thing on flashlights, different types of flashlights, bright lights, baby. And Streamlight, the good people at Streamlight, have just come out with a brand new device, which I got to tell you, this is pretty sexy. I have this down as a pretty serious piece of monster hunting kit here. It's the Litebox 1 million. Streamlight, a leading provider of high-performance flashlights, has launched the Litebox 1 million, the ultimate long-range searchlight. This is a handheld device, okay? Looks like one of those, you know those flashlights you have that have like the bucket on it and a beam on the front? The Litebox 1 million, engineered for demanding professional uses, the Litebox 1 million delivers 1 million candela with a beam of distance over a mile. This rugged, rechargeable next-generation scene light is both lighter and more compact than its predecessor, the HID Lightbox. It has been updated to modern technology standards and compatible with existing Lightbox accessories. The fully portable searchlight emits a powerful long-range beams that can illuminate objects over 1.25 miles away. Yeah. So I'm just saying that, you know, if you've got some shadow people, they probably don't like bright light. The shotgun, probably not going to do much to it. But hey, let's Let's put some light on that, shall we? I think so. You know, that's a pretty sweet light. And anyone's ever done night diving or spent time in like real darkness, light is good. Light is really, really good. The Litebox 1 million uses 3 white high-power LEDs and a deep dish parabolic reflectors to provide long-range beam and ultra-bright light. On the high, the light provides 3,300 lumens, 1 million candela, and a runtime of 4 hours. 4 hours. With 3,300 lumens. Not bad. Not bad. On low, it delivers 20 hours of runtime at 500 lumens. 500 lumens. But getting 3,300 lumens out of a searchlight, that's pretty good, you know? The Litebox 1 million provides outstanding reach, powerful brightness, blah, 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 blah. So it's waterproof, weatherproof, all that good stuff. The downside to this bad boy is it's rocking from between $659 to $715 US, depending on the config. But it is a Streamlight piece of kit. But it's interesting because there's a lot of interesting flashlights that are coming along. Now, a lot of stuff that's coming out of China could probably get you hurt and will probably burn up your hands if you're not careful, especially with some of these crazy batteries they're putting on these things. So you got to be... And, you know, a lot of these things, if they happen to turn on in your bag by accident, it's going to melt a hole in your bag. It's going to start a fire. That's how crazy these lights are. So you got to be careful with this stuff. But, you know, if your neighbor's suddenly attacked by a massive dog-like thing in the darkness, you're going to be thinking to yourself, you know, I wouldn't mind having a 1 million candelera light right about now. I think that'd be really cool. I think I'd like to drop a few thousand lumen on something with a searchlight. I think it's a good plan. And honestly, you know, when you consider the kind of things that are going to be happening, there's a lot happening this year, a lot happening this summer. And it makes me think that there's something coming up, something just around the bend, something that is emerging. And you got to ask yourself, will you be ready for it?